Okay, so let's get to work here. First thing we're going to do is Chapter 2 practice. And I haven't even looked yet, but I'm going to tell you something before we even look. Most of you have not even started this.
Oh, for shame, he's late.
Mr.
Yeah.
I went to 4:43. It's 3:43.
Why? Let's look at the assignments results here. Oh no, we've got 6 students who did not start yet. Actually, so we've still got 19 left in here. So we've actually only have 2 of you that haven't looked at this. So that's actually better than I expected. Okay, so Chapter 2, and the question that's being asked here is number 9. Number 9 says, Schwert shows the following information on its income statement: sales of $222,000, costs of $132,000, other expenses of $7,900, depreciation expense of $19,700, interest expense of $14,000, taxes of $16,940, dividends of $11,000. In addition, you're told that the firm issued $5,500 in new equity during 2020 and redeemed $4,000 in outstanding long-term debt. What does redeemed mean on debt? Paid off. They paid off. If you redeem, they paid off their debt. And so they paid down their debt by $4,000. And so it's asking us, what is the 2020 operating cash flow? So, can anyone tell me what the formula for operating cash flow is? Oh, very good. Plus depreciation minus taxes. Now, they give us depreciation and taxes. So depreciation here, $19,700, and the taxes were $16,940. Thank you. Okay, so the only thing we're missing is earnings before interest and taxes. Now, they give us information here to build an income statement. So let's go ahead and do that. So what's the top line they give us? Sales. And keep in mind, it may be different names, but it's always the same idea. So is it 222,000? Is that right? Okay. Costs of 132,000. And then, so while we're doing this, we're building this out, of course, we'll have to put depreciation in there. And depreciation is $19,700. Interest expense. So before, so what does the I stand for in EBIT?
Interest.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do is we're going to calculate EBIT before we get into that. Then we're going to subtract interest, and that's going to give us our taxable income.
I have a
So,
question.
okay.
Other expenses, is that before depreciation?
Oh, did I put other, oh crap. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Why would they not put that in with the cost?
Would you do something like that on the exam?
Oh, it's possible. Unlikely, but possible. So how much are the other expenses?
7,009.
7,900, like that?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else I need to put in there before we calculate EBIT? Okay.
Depreciation.
Yes. I had that in there earlier. 19,700?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think we're ready to calculate EBIT. Are there any objections before I do that? Okay, so what are you going to do here? You're going to put this in your calculator. So that's 90,000 minus 79,000 minus, oh, no, 90,000? I'm glad you guys are keeping an eye on me. Minus 7,900 equals, minus 19,700. 62,400. Okay, now I believe we have enough information to calculate this because we've got 62,400 plus the 19,700 minus the 16,940. Now, you say, wait a minute, we just subtracted this and added it back. Why did I even have to do this to begin with? Because many times you will be asked to calculate the taxes. It won't just be given to you. And so that's why we're going to go ahead and work it straight like this. Okay, so we were just given the taxes this time. Let's put this together. So 62,400 plus 19,700 plus 0 minus 16,940. We get 65,160, which, by the way, happens to be the right answer. So it looks like we did something right. That's the first thing. Now, cash flow to creditors. Interest sounds like a cash flow to creditors. Does that make sense? Interest minus the net new debt. Net new long-term debt. Did you guys notice that? It's got to be long-term debt. Be careful. This is something that always screws people up. Okay, how much do they tell us that they spend in interest? 14,000? Minus, now if they just told us that they redeemed 4,000 in long-term debt. So if I redeem it, is that a positive new debt or negative? Negative. And the way to know for sure is you know that paying off debt is money out of your pocket, just the same as interest is. Does that make sense? And so that's why our cash flow to creditors is 18,000. Now, what if they hadn't told us what the change was? We would have taken the new debt level minus the old debt level. So it would be the current year long-term debt minus last year's long-term debt would give us this number right here. So they could have made this harder. They could have given us those two numbers or just given us the balance sheet for 2 years. Okay, now let's talk about cash flow to shareholders. Cash flow to shareholders is equal to, do you think dividends might be in there? Yeah, dividends minus, we're just going to say net new stock. I'm hearing whispering. Is there a question? Okay. So, dividends, and did they tell us how much dividends they paid?
1973. No, sorry.
11,000? Yeah, 11,000. Minus, did they issue any new stock?
5,000.
5,500, right? 5,500. So I'm going to go with 6,500 on that. Oh, 5,500. Yeah, 5,500. Okay, now, you got to be careful, because we just gave you a little kiss there with the net new stock. Here's how it could have gone down. I could have said, I could have given you a balance sheet, and you would have had to figure it out how much common stock had been issued in each of 2 years. What would I add together on the balance sheet to get the total common stock at any point, or at either of those years? There's 2 accounts. Capital surplus, and then, oh, you picked the hard one. What's the easy one? Common stock apart. You got to add those 2 together. So you do that for the new, and then you subtract for the old. But there's one more thing. Because we have stock repurchases, you've got to look at the treasury stock. If the treasury stock went from 20,000 to 26,000, that means we repurchased 6,000 in stock. When you repurchase 6,000 in stock, that's a cash flow to the shareholders. And so we'd have minus there. So you got to be careful about these things. It could have been more complex than this. You're thinking, oh damn, it could have been worse, right? Okay, so let's see, and then the addition to net working capital. Oh my goodness. Things are about to get hairy. Are you ready? Can I go ahead and erase this? Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, things are about to get hairy here. Okay, so we know that CFA is equal to CFB, or cash flow to creditors, plus cash flow to shareholders, CFTS. So you'll see these written either way, don't let that freak you out. Okay, now the other thing that we know is that CFA is equal to OCF minus NCS minus the change in net working capital. Have I made any mistakes? Would you guys know if I did? Should have this stuff on your note sheet, right? Okay, now what does this mean? These two things are equal, and so we can just say cash flow to creditors plus cash flow to shareholders is equal to OCF minus NCS minus change in net working capital. And so I can rearrange this. The change in net working capital is equal to OCF minus NCS minus CFTC minus CFTS. Have I screwed anything up? I'm not perfect. I screw stuff up all the time. So let's make sure here. These two went to the other side, so they should have negative signs. This came to the other side, it should have a positive sign. And these stayed where they were at, so their signs should do the same. So far, so good. Now, here's the question. Do we know OCF? Yeah. Do we know cash flow to creditors? It's 18,000. Yeah. Do we know cash flow to shareholders? So the only thing we're missing here is this NCS. Anybody have any idea how we're going to get net capital spending?
Ending net fixed assets.
Yeah.
Plus depreciation.
Let's see. So net fixed assets ending minus,
Beginning.
the net fixed assets beginning. And then she said something weird. What'd you say there at the end?
Is it wrong?
No, it's totally
Plus
correct.
depreciation.
Yeah, plus depreciation. Now, let's talk about why it's weird, but it's correct. This ending net fixed asset number is missing the depreciation from the current year. It's missing that depreciation. Depreciation is not a real cash flow. We're looking at net capital spending, which is actual cash, right? So we don't care about the depreciation stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ending net fixed assets, subtract the beginning, and then I got to add back that depreciation. Now, let's see what it tells us. It says, if net fixed assets increased by $20,000 during the year, what was the addition to net working capital? So what they're really saying is, this number right here is 20,000. Does that make sense? And then we're going to add in that, how much was it? 11, no,
19,000.
19,000.
7, sorry. 700.
She's messing with me. 19,700?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I could have just looked up here. Okay, now, so all told, that's 39,700. So we're back over here. 39,700. Let's do the math. 65, 160. No, I can do that in my head. Okay, so here we go. Minus 39,700. minus 18,000 minus 5,500. And lo and behold, we get the correct answer. Now, if you see a question on the exam that gives you all this stuff and asks you to find the change in net working capital, what should you do? Pass, right? Just pass. Move on to the next problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mentioned that last time. Some of these things are going to be cripplingly difficult to you, much like passing a kidney stone. Some of them are going to be very, very easy, like falling asleep in my class. You need to do the easy ones first and then work your way up, right? Because if you just randomly ended up with a hard question for number 1 and you decided you were just going to sit there and beat on it, you could burn 30 minutes and still not get the right answer and then not have enough time to finish the exam. So that's my advice to you. You are allowed to skip forward and backwards. You can do anything you want until the time comes that either time runs out or you hit that submit button, and then it's all said and done. Questions? Okay. Okay for me to erase this now? Gotta remember to take my eraser with me because people tend to do things with it. So one time when I was in industry, the plant manager was up giving a speech and he wrote, and he was writing on the screen, on a movie screen, not on the whiteboard. And he got through and he said, and we're all like, because he wrote on the screen. And then he gets down, he says, are there any questions? Nobody had any questions. And he looked at his secretary and said, Susanna, order a new screen. And that was the end of it. I thought that was pretty cool. Order a new screen. Okay, so now we are on to, come on, we'll return to Blackboard. You guys have any Chapter 2 homework questions? You have Chapter 3 practice questions. Okay, so 16 out of 19 of you have started. That's pretty good. Oh, preview. And we'll start with number 3 here. Y3K Inc. has sales of 6209, total assets of 2825, and a debt-to-equity ratio of 1.1. If its return on equity is 11%, what is its net income? Okay, so we know, first of all, that ROE is equal to net income over total equity. Does that sound right? Okay, now we can rearrange that to net income is equal to ROE times TE. And so if they gave us the total equity, this would be really easy because they gave us ROE, right? But did they give us total equity? No, they give us total assets. Now, does anyone remember what happens when you get add 1 to the debt-to-equity ratio? What do you get? Equity multiplier. So our equity multiplier here is total assets over total equity, and it is equal to 1 plus 1.1, which is 2.1. Are you with me so far? Okay, so now all we have to do is solve this thing for total equity. And so all that's going to happen is these two are going to change places. Total assets divided by 2.1 is equal to total equity. How much are the total assets? 2825? So let's get our calculator out. 2825 divided by 2.1 tells us it's 1345.3. Just leave numbers in your calculator if you can. right? Okay, now we're going to multiply by the ROE. Remember, it's got to be in decimal. If you're using something for multiplication within a formula, it's got to be in a decimal. 0.11 equals. I'm getting $147.98, which is exactly what they get. Wasn't that a cool little shortcut? 1 plus the debt to equity ratio is equal to the equity multiplier. It's just total assets over total equity. Bada bing, bada boom, you've got your total equity. Questions? Okay. Now let's look at number 5. Assume the following ratios are constant. They've got total asset turnover, profit margin, equity multiplier, and the payout ratio. They want to know what is the sustainable growth rate. So, and I told you earlier that the best thing you can do is to always start with the question, and then you can work your way back. And we know the sustainable growth rate is equal to ROE times B divided by 1 minus ROE times B. I don't even have to put that on there, but I'm going to put the parentheses because many of you are unfamiliar with the orders of operation, which is sad. Okay, now, so what we need to do is they give us the payout ratio. How are we going to get B? Yeah, it's going to be 1 minus 0.2 because the retention ratio is 1 minus the payout ratio. So B is going to be 0.8. Now, let's see ROE. They give us total asset turnover, profit margin, and equity multiplier. Oh my goodness, what can we do with those ingredients? What can we cook?
ROE?
Yeah, ROE using the DuPont identity, right? And so we know that ROE is profit margin times total asset turnover times the equity multiplier. So what do they tell us the profit margin is? 5.5%. And total asset turnover is what?
2.6.
2.6. And then what's the equity multiplier? 1.4. Now, could have made this a little bit harder on you. Could have given you the debt to equity ratio. What would you have done with that? Add 1, right? Okay, so let's crank this through our calculator. So I'm going to go with 0.055. Actually, if we leave it as a percentage, what's that going to mean for our sustainable growth rate? It's really not going to matter one way or... Oh, no. Sorry. Phew, we do have to use a decimal. Dang, I'm high. Okay, so 0.055 times 2.6 times 1.4. Can anyone tell me the debt to equity ratio for this firm? 0.4, right? You just subtract 1. Okay, is this the number everybody's getting? Okay, now that's our ROE. So it's really 20.02%. Now, what number am I going to have to multiply that by here? By 0.8. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and multiply that by 0.8. And then I'm going to say store 1. There are ways to store stuff in the calculator memory. You hit the store button, and then there are 10 drawers you can put that information in, 0 through 9 buttons. And so I'm storing this in drawer number 1. To get that back, I'm going to hit RCL 1, and it will bring that information back. Any information I had previously stored in drawer 1 goes away when I store this new stuff over. It just overwrites it, doesn't give you any warning whatsoever. So I'm going to say store 1, it's still there. Just to make sure, I'm going to say recall 1, there it is. Okay, now, here's the counterintuitive thing. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to start on the bottom, and I'm going to say 1 minus recall 1 equal. So now I've got this bottom part. You guys see that? Now, to divide by something is the same as multiplying by the inverse. Let me say that one more time. To divide by something is the same as multiplying by the inverse. Do you see a key on your calculator that just still looks like it might be the inverse? look 2 over the number 9. What do you see? It says 1 over x, right? You pop that, it gives you the inverse, and now all I have to do is multiply it by ROE times B. Where do I have that stored? Location 1. How do I get it back? Recall 1. And there we go. 19.07. Any questions? Okay, so that was number 5. Now we're on to number 7. Walker has current liabilities of $441,000, a quick ratio of 0.8, inventory turnover of 5.6, and a current ratio of 1.7. What is the cost of goods sold for the company? Okay, so what formula do we have that has cost of goods sold in it? Inventory turnover. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do it here. And that is equal to COGS divided by inventory, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. They're wanting to know COGS, so all we've got to do is say COGS is equal to inventory times inventory turns. But there's a problem. We've got inventory turns. Do we have inventory? No, but they give us the quick ratio. And the quick ratio is current assets minus inventory divided by current liabilities. Does that sound right? Okay, now we have the ratio itself. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, current ratio of 0.8. And they give us current liabilities of $441,000. But do they give us current assets? Those sneaky bastards. Now, how in the world are we going to figure out what our current assets are? Say it again?
From current ratio.
Yeah, from the current ratio. So the current ratio is equal to current assets divided by current liabilities. And so to get current assets, all I have to do is take, I'm going to call it CR here, multiply it by the current liabilities. What do they tell us the current ratio is? 1.7. So 1.7 times 441,000. $1.7 times 441,000 equals, I'm getting $749,700. Does that look right? Okay, now they tell us quick ratio, we've got that, and so now we can calculate inventory. So what are we going to do to get inventory here? Well, the first thing I have to do is multiply both sides by 441,000 bucks. So 0.8 times 441,000. And that's going to be equal to 749,000. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to run this the other way. So I'm going to put inventory over here. It's going to give it a positive sign. We're going to move this stuff to the other side. That's going to have a negative sign. Am I freaking you out with the algebra here? Good. Okay, now we've moved that thing over to the other side, and then there's a positive current assets of 749,700. Does that look right? Okay. So let's figure out what we're doing here. We're going to subtract, and the way I'm going to do this is to say open parenthesis 0.8 times 0.8, you jerk. 749,700 minus, open parentheses, 0.8 times 441,123, close parentheses, equals. I'm getting 396,900. Does that sound right? Okay. And so now, all we've got to do is take 396,900 and multiply by our inventory turns. What are our inventory turns that they tell us? 5.6?
That 396, 900,000 figure, right?
No, this is positive. And here's why. This is positive, and it's much bigger than this thing here. So imagine if this were just 1 times 441,000, and we're subtracting that, you would know it's going to be small, or it's going to be still a positive number, right? And so if it's even just a fraction of that. See, this is one of those things that doing it in the calculator doesn't do for your brain, right? It doesn't let you know what the number should look like when you get done. I'm sorry that we've messed you up so badly. Okay, other questions on this one? Okay, now we're on to chapter 3, homework.
Is there any other way that this question can come?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'll give you a hint. If you work through it in your way and you get the right answer, then your way is one of those. If you work it through your way and you don't get the right answer, then it's not. Oh, yeah, it's a pain in the butt. We could go through all these in many different ways. What am I showing you today?
Your way.
My way, which is the quickest way, right?
So that should be the way on the exam, since
You
you
know,
made it.
yeah, but frankly, do I care how you do it on the exam? Hey, if you get it through prayer or divination or meditation, I don't care. What I do care is if you get it through cheating, right? And it's really hard to cheat on my exams. By the way, we watch you the entire time, right? If you scratch your nose, I know. If you break wind, I know. If your cat jumps on the desk, I know, right? Questions? Okay, now we're on to chapter 3, homework. Blackboard. Homework. And we want to see number 3 first. Lancaster Bakery has net fixed assets of $329,000, current assets of $87,200, a price to earnings ratio of 12.8, a debt to equity ratio of 0.42, and earnings per share of $1.97. What's the market to book ratio if there are 36,000 shares of stock outstanding? Oh my. Okay, so as before, start with the question. And the question is, what is the market to book ratio? That's going to be the market value of equity divided by the book value of equity, which is also going to be the share price divided by the book value per share. Okay, now how do I find, let's see, do they give us the share price? No, they don't. But they do give us the price to earnings ratio. Let's talk about the other part here, the book value of equity. How would you find the book value of equity? Well, the book value of the equity, so you're kind of jumping ahead. But how would we find the total book value of the equity? We're going to take the book value of the assets, and we're going to subtract out the book value of the liabilities. And that should give us the book value of the equities. So they're telling us we got net fixed assets of $329,700, current assets of $87,200. If you add those two together, what should you get? Total assets. Okay, so total assets is equal to $329,700. And what's the other number? 87.2. Okay, now, have they given us enough information here to figure out the total equity? What other piece of information have they given us? See, okay, they haven't quite given it to us, but you're thinking in the right direction. What did they give to us? They did the equity ratio of 0.42. So what is the equity multiplier? So we'll do this math later. Equity multiplier is equal to 1.42 is equal to total assets over total equity. If I want total equity, all I gotta do is go, whoop, right? Total equity is equal to total assets divided by 1.42. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add these things in my calculator, and I'm gonna divide by 1.42, and that's gonna give me that book value of equity. So here we go. 329,700 plus 87,200 equals. That's my total assets. You can write that down if you want. I'm not even going to do that because all I'm going to do is divide that by 1.42 to get my total equity. And so this is the book value of the equity is $293,591. Is that what you guys are getting? Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to store that in location 1, just in case everything goes horribly wrong. And on my test paper, or on my scratch paper, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a 1 here, and I'm going to draw a circle around this. And that'll help me remember that that's where I stuck that thing. Does that make sense? Okay, now we are trying to get book value. Let's say we're going for book value per share. How would I get book value per share from there?
Divided by the number of shares.
Yeah, divide by the number of shares, and they give you 36,000. And so I'm getting 8.155. Is that what you get? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write that that's in location 2. And I'm going to say store 2. So now the only thing that we're missing to be able to find this market to book ratio is the share price. What have they given us that has share price in that equation?
Share.
Say again?
Earning per share is 1.97. Or-
Yeah, okay, so they give us earnings per share, and they also give us,
Number-
Peter, yeah, very good. Okay, so we've got PE is equal to share price divided by EPS. And so all I've got to do to find share price is take PE times EPS. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Get my calculator out. 1.97, that's my EPS, multiplied by the PE ratio of how much? 12.8? Equals. I'm getting 25.216. Is that what you get? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say store 3. That's my share price. How am I going to get it from here? All I got to do is then divide by, recall 2. I'm getting 3.09. Students hate this class. And one of the reasons they hate this class is because I don't just give you, like, if I'm asking for PE ratio, do I just give you the price and the EPS? No. So you got to know what all these different things are and where stuff shows up. By the way, is it possible I'm going to give you more information than you need? Yeah. Oh, I've had people get really mad at me. They're like, wait a minute, you gave me the cost of goods sold. I didn't really need that. And I'm like, phew. In the real world, do you think you'll have more information than you need or less? Less. But how would you guys feel if I did that to you on an exam? Yeah, you'd be mad, right? So the closest thing I can do is to give you too much information and let you dig through it.
You said the book value per share would be the 36,000.
No. So the book value per share is going to be the book value of the equity, which we calculated there, and it should still be in your calculator as 1, recall 1. And then what we did is we took that and divided by the number of shares. How many shares do we have?
That's the 36.
36,000. And that gave us the book value per share. Yeah. Now, the other way we could have gone about this is to have found the share price, multiplied it by 36,000, and that would have given us market value of the equity. Whatever trips your trigger. Remember earlier I told you there's usually more than one way to get to the, there it is. Yes?
Okay, so I'm just clarifying. I was looking at the market to book value ratio over here. Instead of doing the MV over PVE, we just did share price over PV share, right?
Yeah, and so these are exactly the same thing. And it turns out, I'll show you the reason why. If we multiply these by times the number of shares, this is exactly that. This is exactly that. And what happens to the number of shares? Oh, come on, it's on the top and the bottom. What happens? Yeah, it cancels out, right? Does that make sense? Okay, now let's see. That was number 3 on the homework. I believe number 5 is up next. Number 5. A firm has a debt-to-equity ratio of 0.53. What is the total debt ratio? I'm going to show you the long way, and then I'm going to show you the easy way, so you'll understand why the easy way is the way it is. Okay, so they give us the what, debt to equity ratio? TD over TE is equal to 0.53. Haven't screwed anything up so far. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say TD is equal to 0.53 times TE. All I've done is multiply both sides by TE. Okay, now here's the fun thing. Total assets, let's see, total debt over total assets. That's what they're asking for, right? The total debt ratio? That's total debt divided by, it turns out that wherever I see total debt, I can substitute 0.53 TE. Because these are the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so all I'm going to do over here is say 0.53 TE. Now, total assets is equal to total debt plus total equity. I know that total debt is 0.53 TE, 0.53 TE, and then down here I'm going to say plus TE. Are you with me so far? Now, there's something funky that goes on here, something there's an invisible 1 in front of that TE. Did you guys know there's an invisible 1 in front of this TE right here? Does that make sense? Okay, now, what's the next thing that I can do? Mr. Ali, what can I do next? What can I cancel out?
TE.
Yeah, I can get rid of all the TEs, right? Whoop, whoop, whoop. Does that make sense? And so what am I left over with? 0.53 divided by 1.53. I'm pretty sure if you do the math out, that will give you 0.35. That's the easiest way. So the easiest way to do this would be to say, oh, wait a minute. Total debt over total assets is equal to the debt to equity ratio divided by 1 plus the debt to equity ratio. And so if you've got those numbers, There you go. It's just 0.53 divided by 1.53. What if the debt to equity ratio was 0.36? It would be how much? 0.36 divided by 1.36. Now, for those of you who are especially sharp, you may have noticed that this is the equity multiplier down here, right? I mean, there's all sorts of ways to skin this thing. But if you just wanted to write on your note sheet this little bit right here, you would be able to quickly answer that question without having to do any algebra at all. Questions? Okay, that takes care of number 5. Let's move on to number 6. A firm has sales of $215,600, costs of $124,800, interest paid of $3,600, and depreciation of $11,400. The tax rate is 34%. What's the value of the cash coverage ratio? So, what is the cash coverage ratio? Does anyone know the formula?
EBIT plus depreciation.
Uh-huh.
Divided by interest.
So I'm going to say cash coverage ratio is equal to EBIT plus depreciation divided by interest. EBIT. So it would be 215,600 minus 124,800. And then, of course, we would subtract out our depreciation. But then what are we going to do right back?
Add it back.
Add it back. And so what I would do is tell you that we're just looking at 215,600 minus 124,800. Does that make sense? Then we're going to divide that by the interest, which is $3,600. So, did I subtract out depreciation? Yes, but then I added it right back. So why even muck with it, right? It's just 2 more opportunities to screw up your math. Does that make sense? Okay, now we are on to number 8. Western Wear has net working capital of $5,200, net fixed assets of $128, sales of $114, current liabilities of $9,800. For each dollar in total assets, the firm generates sales of. Okay, so do they give us sales? Yeah. So what they're really asking for here is total asset turnover. They give us sales, and it's what, 114,000? So all we have to figure out is total assets. So how do we get the total assets out of this? We've got net working capital, we've got net fixed assets, and we've got current liabilities. So I want to show you something here. Net working capital is equal to current assets minus current liabilities. Does that sound right? Yeah. Can I solve that thing for current assets? What could I do? How do I do that?
Net working capital plus current liability.
Yeah. So current assets is just equal to net working capital plus current liabilities. And so what we're really looking here for total assets is the net fixed assets plus the net working capital plus the current liability. That's all we've got to do. And so let's see here. We've got 5,200, 128,000. $5,200, let's see. And then plus 9,800. Okay, you put these two together, you get 15,000. So I'm going to go with 143,000 in total assets. Does that sound right? You guys are the ones with the calculators, right? Okay, so I think it's 143,000, and we already had the sales here. $114 divided by 143. Come on. 114 divided by 143 equals 0.797 or Does that make sense? Okay, now, did you see what I did there when I was typing those numbers in? Did I even type in the 3 zeros? Why not? Yeah, they cancel out. It's just another chance for you to screw up, right? So just don't do that. Okay, that was number 8. Now we're on to number 10. Martin's Lumber has a profit margin of 7%, a dividend payout ratio of 30%. The total asset turnover is 0.90. The debt to equity ratio is 0.45. What's the sustainable growth rate? Sustainable growth rate? Yeah. What's the formula?
ROE times B divided by 1 minus ROE.
And we know that B is equal to the plowback ratio. Do they give us the plowback or retention ratio? Oh, what did they give us? Dividend payout. So we're looking at 1 minus 0.3 is 0.7. So we've got that bit. Now we need to have ROE. So let's look at the ingredients they've given us. If they gave us net income and total equity, it's really easy, but they didn't. What they did is they gave us the profit margin. They gave us the total asset turnover. What's it starting to sound like?
DuPont.
Yeah, the DuPont. Did they give us equity multiplier?
No.
No, those jerks. What did they give us?
Debt to equity.
Yeah, they gave us debt to equity. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say profit margin of 0.07. Is that correct? And we're going to multiply by the total asset turnover of 0.9. And then we're going to multiply it by the equity multiplier, which is just 1 plus 0.45 or 1.45. Does that make sense? Okay, do I have to do the math out? Or does this, we already did a practice that looked a whole lot like this, right? I think hopefully you can get it from here. Because we're running out of time. Okay, so that's number 10. Now we're on to chapter 4. Oh, wake up. Eight students not started. So 13 of you have started it. That's good. 13 out of 19. Yeah. Okay. 15, 16, 17, and 18, where we're going. First Simple Bank pays 9.7% simple interest on its investment accounts. First Complex Bank pays interest on its accounts compounded annually. What rate should the bank set if it wants to match this First Simple Bank over an investment horizon of 9 years? Okay, so here's what we know. Simple interest. You're only earning money on the initial investment, not on interest. And so let's say, and to make the math easy, let's just say we're putting $100 in this thing to begin with. Does that sound okay? Every year, if it's paying 9.7% simple interest, how much interest are you going to earn every year? $100 in the bank, you're making 9.7%. What's 9.7% of 100? I'm making the math really easy here. Yeah, $9.70. And how many years are you going to do that for? 9 years. And so here's what I would do. I would say 9.7 times 9 equals. That's how much interest I'm going to earn. And I'm also going to have my initial 100. That's what we're going to have at the end. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Your calculator does compound interest. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say second clear TVM. I'm going to hit that in as the future value. What should I put in for the present value? 100, my initial 100, but what's the sign have to be? Negative, very good. Present value. What do I put in for N? 9. And then what do I compute? Yeah, I for Y. Bada bing, bada boom, there you go.
You put it in as negative because you paid it out to investors?
Yeah, so opposite cash flow, opposite direction, cash flows in opposite directions have opposite signs. I could have just as easily made the future value negative and the present value positive. Doesn't matter one bit. Does that look easy enough? Okay, now let's move on. You're planning to save for retirement over the next 25 years. To do this, you'll need to invest $880 a month in a stock account and $480 a month in a bond account. The return on the stock account is expected to be APR 10.8. The bond account will be APR 6.8. When you retire, you will combine your money into an account with an APR 7.8%. And they're asking how much can you withdraw from your account, assuming a withdrawal period of 20 years. So here's the first thing I want to do for you is draw you a picture. So we've got stock and we've got bond. And we're going to be investing in those as we go. So we're going to be making PMTs into them every month, right? And then, how far out in the future are we looking? 25 years. And so what we're looking for here for these things is the future values. And we're going to add that together, and it's going to become the present value for the series of payments going forward. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's put in what we know. 25 years, but how frequently are we making the payments? Monthly. So what is my N going to be? It's going to be 25 times 12, which is what, 300? So N 300, N 300. The interest rate on the stock account, what is it? It's 10.8 divided by 12. You guys see why that is? And what is it for the bonds? Okay. And then the payment. How much are we putting into the stock account? 880?
880.
So it's 880 and 480. Okay, so now what we can do, and by the way, let's go ahead and make these, we'll leave them as is. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Clear, second, clear TVM. For 25 times 12, just check our math here. 300, I'm going to say N, and then the I for Y, 10.8 divided by 12 equals, and then I got to hit I per Y. My payment was what, 80? Payment, and I'm going to compute the future value. Note the future value is negative, but that's just the sign convention, right? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to store 1. Did everybody get that same number? Okay, now, here's the cool thing. Does this change any? No, we're going to leave it alone then. And I'm just going to say 6.8 divided by 12 equal I per Y. My payment changes. That's the only other thing that changes. And now I'm going to compute future value. Is this what you're getting? Okay, what do you think I'm going to do with that number? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and store 2 just in case everything goes horribly wrong. Remember, I used to be an engineer at a nuclear power plant. I care if things go horribly wrong, and they do. So here we go. How do I add those two numbers together?
Recall 1.
Recall 1 plus recall 2. Now, we said that's going to represent the present value for the remainder. Now it says you want to, let's see, withdrawal period of 20 years. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say second clear TVM. What am I going to do with this number right here as far as TVM? I'm going to present value, right? And then, what am I gonna do for N? 240, right? 20 times 12. And then, how much are they telling us we're gonna get interest rate? 7.8, but what do I have to do with that number? Gotta divide it by 12 because I want monthly payments. And then, how would I find out the amount that I can withdraw every month? Compute the payment. There we go, $14,143.86. Now I'm going to ask you a quick grisly question. What does it say about this person's assumption about how long they're going to live by this calculation? Retirement plus 20, right? Does that make sense? You kind of have a good idea of when you're going to die to make something like this to work out.
Since you're working with APR, could you just convert payment to yearly?
No, because it would, it leaves out the compound. Yeah. Often asked question, a good question, but no, can't do that. It would be nice. Other questions? Okay. So, let's see. That was 16, now we're on to 17. Suppose an investment offers to quadruple your money in 42 months. By the way, don't believe that. What is your rate of return per quarter are you being offered? Okay, one of the things that we need to do is always remember that our period needs to be the same for both the number of periods and for the interest rate. How many months are in a quarter? How many months are in a quarter?
3.
3, very good. By the way, you guys hit the most common wrong answer. Okay, so there are 3 months in a quarter. How many quarters then are there in 42 months? 42 divided by 3, 14, right? Okay, so what we're really looking at here is 14 quarters. And they're telling us quadruple your amount of money. Now, here's the cool thing. Does it matter whether I'm going from 1 to 4? Oh, by the way, quadruple means multiply by 4, right? Does it? I could just do 1 and 4. I could do 100, 400. Doesn't matter as long as the second number is 4 times the first one. And so we're going to say PV is equal to -1. Future value is equal to positive 4. And then all we got to do is compute I or Y. So get your calculator out. And by the way, this is extremely important this time that you hit second clear TVM. Otherwise, that PMT from the last problem is going to be hanging out there and will cause you havoc. You don't want that. Okay, so we got 14 quarters. We have 1 negative for the present value and a 4 for the future value. And then we just compute I for Y. I'm getting 10.41, which is exactly what they get. Does that sound right? Now, what if they said it had offered to quintuple your investment? What have we done? What would we have done?
5.
Yeah, -1 and 5. And if it had said double, it would be -1 and 2. Do you guys get how that works now? I just freak students out because there's no actual money number given. There doesn't have to be. Let's see, 18. Mark Weinstein has been working on an advanced technology in laser eye surgery. His technology will be available in the near term. He anticipates his first annual cash flow from the technology to be $165,000, received 2 years from today. Subsequent annual cash flows will grow at 2.5% in perpetuity. What's the value of the technology today if the discount rate is 11%? Okay, so a couple things we need to know here. How does this thing grow? It says it's a growing perpetuity. That means that this stuff goes on and on and on and on, growing at the same rate throughout all time. Does that make sense? And we know that the P sub 0 for that, or present value, is C1 over R minus G. Now, in this case, is there a cash flow at time 1? No. Cash flow doesn't actually start until time 2. And so we can change this formula to be P1 is C2 over R minus G. Because all that matters is that this thing always be one less than this thing. All that matters is that this thing always be one less than this thing. Okay, now we can go ahead and figure out P1. That first cash flow was what, 165,000 bucks? 0.11 is the discount rate. What's the growth rate? 2.5. So I'm going to get a calculator out here. I'm going to say 165,000. 1, 2, 3. Divide by, open parenthesis, 0.11 minus 0.025, close parentheses, equals. I'm getting 1.94. Does that look familiar? Okay, now, here's the next thing we need to know. They want to know what is P0. So we're gonna call this the present value, and we're gonna call this the future value. How many periods happen between these two? Yeah, just one. So n is equal to 1. And what do you think we're going to put in for I per y? Yeah, 11, because that's the required return. So all I'm going to do with this number right here, first of all, I'm going to say second clear TVM. And then I'm going to put in 1 for n. And I'm going to put in 11 for I per y. And I'm going to compute the present value. What the hell? Okay, so let's try that one more time. I didn't manage to save that thing, did I? 165,000. You remember what I said about things going terribly wrong? 0.11 minus 0.025, close parentheses, equals. Put that in as my future value. Come on, there we go. 1 as n, 11 as I per y. I'm going to compute the present value, which is exactly what they got. Any questions? Now, so it could be worse. What if they gave us what if they gave us C3? If I take C3 and divide by R minus G, what do I get? P2, right? And if I get P2, all I've got to do is take it back now 2 periods instead of just 1. That's how it works. Questions? Wow, I'm thrilled. We're done with 5 minutes left. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask?